and welcome back to another episode of The Book Stop. I'm your host Jen, and I'm very excited to talk about today's episode. But before we begin, there will be spoilers as we talk about major events that unfold within the story. In addition, each episode will have a list of trigger warnings in the description. Be sure to follow the podcast on Instagram at The Book Stop Podcast, and show your support on Patreon for early access to episodes and other additional content. And we're back with another episode of The Book Stop, and today on the spooky season, we have for the first time ever, Anastasia.
Hello, 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 it's me.
It's her. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
What book did you bring for us to talk about, and why did you bring it?
So today I brought The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. And I brought it because it's October, so we're going to be super spooky about it. And there's shows and movies based off this book, so I thought it'd be interesting to read because I've never seen the shows or the movies.
Nice, me either. So I literally, when I read it, I was like, okay, now I want to watch the movie. Or, not the movie, the show.
Yeah, I think the show's supposed to be really good. I feel like it was high rated on Netflix for a while.
It's been out for a couple years now. I'm definitely going to watch it probably later tonight.
Yeah, definitely me too.
But yeah, so, Shirley Jackson wrote this in 1959. And a lot of people perceive this as being the perfect work of unnerving terror.
So scary.
Oh, so scary. I don't know if I would necessarily use those exact words. But before we begin, we're going to play a little game. You are going to summarize this book in 30 seconds. And whenever you're ready, you may begin.
So, The Haunting of Hill House is about Dr. Montague and his guests who are going to Hill House. 4 guests going, him, Luke, and then Theo and Elle, and the story really follows Elle in her journey going to Hill House. Follows how Hill House kind of attaches itself to her and kind of is going after her for the whole book. And they're trying to analyze the psychic spirits at the house. And then later in the book, Dr. Montague's wife shows up. Things get scary and cool.
Yes, awesome. Yay, good job. Yay.
Well, I did it.
I'm going to summarize this book for anybody who hasn't heard of it. And again, I've heard it's very different from the TV show. So I think a lot of people, when they come to read the book or vice versa, go to watch the show, they are tripped up when they see that it's very different. But The Haunting of Hill House is a story of 4 seekers who arrive at the notoriously unfriendly pile called Hill House. Dr. Montague, a scholar looking for a solid evidence of a haunting. Theodora, his light-hearted assistant. Eleanor, a friendless, fragile young woman, well acquainted with poltergeists. And Luke, the future heir of Hill House. At first, their stay seems destined to be merely a spooky encounter. But Hill House is gathering its power, and soon it will choose one of them to make its own. Ooh.
Dun dun dun.
But yeah, this book was a lot different than I thought.
Oh yeah, me too.
I did not envision it to take place in the 50s. They were talking about cars and going on the freeway and stuff, and I just and she was like, I left the city. I was envisioning Los Angeles in this massive city, and then she was like, took place in the 50s. So I was like, oh, okay.
In the beginning, when she was talking about going to the car garage, all I could envision was in The Great Gatsby when they were going to the car garage, and I was like, is this the 20s?
Yeah.
I was like, why is she going to a garage for her car?
Yeah, the timeline was very confusing when I first got into it, but then they rolled with it pretty well. Yeah, so we're going to start first with our favorite quote.
Oh, okay.
And I have a lot of them.
Yeah, I have a list here. So this is the first one that really caught my eye. It says, I have a beard, Dr. Montague said, please, and looked around them with a happy beam. My wife, he told them, likes a man to wear a beard. Many women, on the other hand, find a beard distasteful. A clean-shaven man, you'll excuse me, my boy, never looks fully dressed, my wife tells me. And he held out a glass to Luke. I just thought that gives a really good insight to who Miss Montague is before we even meet her as a character, and I loved that.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, and we love that male masculinity of being like, I need to have a beard to be a man.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. One of my quotes is, don't do it, Eleanor told the little girl, and insist on your cup of stars. Once they have trapped you into being like everyone else, you will never see your cup of stars again. We're going to have a whole section about preserving innocence in this book, which is a very common theme that goes throughout. I think it's cool how it comes back again, where Eleanor herself had a cup of stars, which is literally just a cup that had like stars at the bottom of it. And the little girl was just, I want it. And the dad was like, she needs to grow up and you don't need the cup of stars anymore. Just drink the milk out of the freaking cup. Okay?
Yeah.
And Eleanor is just like, don't be like everyone else, because as soon as you give in, again, you'll never see that cup of stars again, and your childhood will just slowly dissipate until it's no longer there.
Yeah, and it weirdly touches on how, like, your parents are the first people to be like, no, you need to stop being this way and you need to be a different way. But I was kind of confused in the whole idea of, does she have her own cup of stars, or was she just relating to the little girl and, like, internalizing it as herself? A lot of confusing
They were
things.
talking about her apartment and how she has a cup of stars. So maybe she's a pathological liar and
Honestly,
she actually doesn't have a cup of stars, and she was pulling inspiration from that kid. But that's a good insight. I'm not sure. I don't believe anything Eleanor says, to be honest.
Oh, definitely.
So.
No, not me either. Okay, so my next quote, no human eye can isolate the unhappy coincidence of line and place which suggests evil in the face of a house, and yet somehow a maniac juxtaposition, a bad turned angle, some chance meeting of roof and sky turned Hill House into a place of despair. More frightening because the face of Hill House seemed awake, with a watchfulness from the blank windows and a touch of glee in the eyebrow of Cornice. I just thought that was beautiful. I love the way that she writes about the house. I love the point of view of the house. I think that that's like the best writing in the book is when she's talking about the house. It's like so captivating. Like it's like its own person. I love that.
Yeah, it was like I was walking up to Monster House, the movie.
Yeah, right? I was like scared of the house the most in the whole book.
Yeah. There's a thing I'm going to talk about later about how the structure of the story, I think it would have been so much better with no haunting, and it was just this house, and it had secrets of itself, and we just discovered them along the way. I won't get into it much right now because we're going to talk about it later, but yeah, absolutely. I like that quote too. Okay, I got a couple more here.
Okay.
Mrs. Montague is talking to Mrs. Dudley.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Montague says, it's a shame, I think, the way children grow up these days knowing everything. There should be more mystery for them. More things that belong to grown-ups that they have to wait to find out. And Mrs. Dudley say, they find them out the hard ways. Yeah, again, it's preserving that innocence. It's a topic that at first applies to the kids, but then eventually applies to the adults in this house as they're kind of entering this new reality themselves. All throughout you see, like, especially like Theodora and Eleanor are just revived with all of this youthful energy and acting like kids themselves. And it's like they're being pulled back to this innocent stature, and then the house is just ripping them apart from it. I just think that's an interesting theme to kind of cling to in the story. Found it very, very interesting.
When they find out that there's two girls who grew up in that house, they're like, how could a child ever grow up here? That's so mind-boggling to me. And then they themselves are acting like children exploring the house. It's like, how can you not understand how kids grew up here if you yourself are acting like children? That I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. I know we have a lot of quotes. There was a lot of good quotes in here. I have two more. Fear and guilt are sisters.
Ooh.
When they said that, I was like kind of taken back because it almost feels like giving nod to Theodora and Eleanor as they kind of embody each one, but also kind of Eleanor herself too, because she feels very guilty and she feels very afraid. I just thought that was a really good quote.
All your quotes that you've had are like also quotes that I thought about but didn't write down, but they're like some of my favorite quotes too.
I love that.
My last quote is, towards the end of the book, it says, "It's the only time anything has ever happened to me, and I liked it. That," the doctor said, "is why you were leaving in such a hurry." And I think that that is, like, a really good line to tell, like, sometimes the things that we enjoy or, like, really like are not the best things for us. And I really liked that.
Yeah, and again, it goes into that innocence of it all. Is, like, kids do things that aren't that great for them, and, you know, adults do it too, but you have to have that person that kind of steps in and say, this is not good for you. You need to skedaddle there.
Yeah.
One last quote. Eleanor is talking with the doctor. She says, "You think we have the right to stay?" They're talking, of course, of Hill House. And he said, "Right. I think we are incredibly silly to stay. I think that an atmosphere like this one can find out the flaws and faults and weakness in all of us and break us apart in a matter of days. We have only one defense, and that is running away. At least it can't follow us, can it? When we feel ourselves in dangers, we can leave, just as we came, just as fast as we can go." And I just like that because it's a little bit of foreshadowing as well for the end of the book, where Eleanor does get kind of almost possessed by the house, and she does go to leave, and then it ends with her never leaving ever again.
Yeah.
like that quote because it kind of sets up this, like, okay, that's true. They do have a way out. They can leave whenever they want.
Yeah, exactly. Just not at dark, but they can leave.
Yeah, but then they actually can't leave.
Yeah,
so.
no.
But yay, all the quotes.
Woo!
A lot of good quotes here. A lot of good quotes. I think that the quotes are very supportive for this writing because there's not a lot of stuff that I liked about the story.
Yeah.
But we'll say the writing was really well done.
That's what when I was going back and I was reading through my quotes, I was like, wow, I really like her writing in general, but the storytelling could have been better.
Yeah. Yeah, so some things I really liked about it, I really enjoyed the eeriness of the town and how it kind of built up the suspense before she got to the house, which only increased the creepiness of the house. When she was at the diner and that woman was there and she was like, we don't get visitors much here. I really enjoyed that. It kind of gave me a little bit of Salem's Lot vibes. Again, another book about like just really creepy town. And I just really enjoyed the suspense building for the house. I really also enjoyed it was interesting. It was third person most of the book, but it almost slipped into first person a little bit because we felt Nell's emotions and we kind of slipped into her head every once in a while, which was very, very interesting. I don't know if that was perceiving as maybe like we were the ghost and like we watched Nell, but we were understanding what she was thinking. I don't know. But I think it pulled from everyone else as well too, which I really liked, how we kind of were floating around everyone. I really enjoyed Theo's and Nell's personalities, I guess, with each other and how swiftly they changed. I liked how they were so adamant about being related in some way and they were acting so childish, and they're in their 30s at least, halfway through their 30s, so they're a little bit older than you would imagine. It was really funny how they bonded so quickly too. And then, of course, I really like the ending. How the house just doesn't let her leave, and she dies, so that way she stays at Hill House. And I just really liked that whole, like, how it kind of brought everything together at the end.
First, like, I kind of already talked about, but just the writing style about how she talked about the house, kind of off your point of view of how, like, it slips into first person. It mainly slips into first person when the house is coming alive and when it's possessing Nell. And so I think that's really, really cool, and I just love the way she describes the house and how eerie it is. I really enjoyed Nell's backstory. When I first started the book, I thought the book was going to be about mainly Dr. Montague and this, like, thing that he's writing in his like dissertation or whatever, and him being a doctor, but then we follow Nell and we start with her and then we follow her whole journey to Hill House, and we don't follow anybody else's journey to Hill House, which I think gives us a foresight that like something's gonna happen to her in the book, and everybody else is just kind of there to support what's going on with her. I also really love the backstory of the house of like Hugh Crane and how he bought it and his daughters. I feel like it's really intertwined of somebody died and then somebody got married and then she randomly took a girl from the town and she was living in the house and then she died and then they got it, and that's how Luke's family, the Sandersons, got the house. Is like this weird intertwine of Hugh Crane's daughter just took a companion from the town, put her in her house, and then when Hugh Crane's daughter died, she took the house, and then she, she committed suicide in the house because she felt like the house was taking over her, and she felt so much pressure from the outside as well as the inside of the house, which I really, really loved.
Yeah, so what are some things that you disliked about the house? Or about the house? What are some things that you disliked about this book?
Well, the same way that I liked that Nell had such a big backstory, I disliked how everybody else had such a little backstory. I think they definitely went into more about Theo, but there was a lot about Theo that I couldn't tell if it was true or not, or if she was lying, or what her actual backstory was. Because I remember in the beginning how she like left her partner or whoever she was living with, her roommate. When she got to Hill House, she just kind of started lying about who she was, and I was very confused. I don't like how they filled their time in the book. They were there to analyze like the hauntings and like the house itself, and a lot of times they weren't even in the house or doing anything. They were running around outside or talking about very different things than what they were there to do. In the beginning, so much happened, and then we went through like 4 chapters of like a little bit of nothing, and they're just like running around opening some doors, closing some doors, some things are happening, and then Miss Montague shows up at like the end of the book and we just go so fast, and then Nell's hitting the tree and I'm like, what hold on, that was really, really quick. Those are like the 2 main things that I disliked.
Definitely bounce right off that. I think that there needed to be more history with the characters. One thing I didn't like was the lack of character development. There was just nothing to strive for. I didn't really care about a lot of them. Okay, I didn't care about Luke, let's be real.
Oh, yeah. He was just there.
Luke felt so useless.
Oh, so useless. Except to, like, create, I feel like, jealousy between Theo and Nell. And that's about it.
That was it, yeah. Which we love a man being used for
oh, yeah, 100%.
devices. Just kidding. A complete lack of character development. Character structure, really. The only person we really get a lot from is Nell, who I think had too much characteristic. She was just extremely, like, stressed all the time and freaking out and nervous and anxiety stricken, but a little of that could be taken and put in. I think Mrs. Montague, though, had a very big personality, which I enjoyed. That's why I liked her so much, because someone other than Nell had a bigger personality. So Luke and the Doctor and Theo all deserved a little bit more. I say this every podcast. I love the characters. That's what draws me to stories, is the characters.
Yeah.
And if you don't give me anything for the characters, I don't know what to, like, cling to with them, I guess. So I tend to not like them as much.
Yeah.
Also, there should have been more than just them playing games and exploring. If you're going to make a ghost story, you have to put ghost activity in. You can't just put it in at the end. And it doesn't have to be this all-stopping, like, breaking someone's neck or anything like that. It can be, like, an item falling down or seeing ghost, like, apparitions and stuff. And we don't really get anything before Mrs. Montague get there, except for the writing on the wall and the banging on the door.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty much all we really get in the beginning.
And really, isn't that only Nell who sees that, too, I feel like?
Which one?
The banging on and, like, the coldness near the nursery. I feel like Nell's the only one in the house who even encounters that.
Well, I think Theo saw it, too.
Oh, yeah, the banging.
Yeah,
was in the
and then
room,
the
too.
men were outside chasing the dog.
Oh, yeah, and that was a ghost, right?
I think so.
Because they talked about how none of the doors were open.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, he ran outside and he ran inside. And I'm like, okay, so is the dog a ghost? What were they chasing?
Yeah.
'Cause there's no way there's a dog there.
Yeah, and I like leaving it up to interpretation of, like, what you want. But I think there needed to be more solid evidence, I guess. We are now Dr. Montague.
Yeah. I think they more so, like, it got confused in the beginning of whether they were ghosts making this or the actual house.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she meant that intentionally for us to be figuring out that it's the house that's attacking them and not ghosts inside of it, or what, but I was a little confused.
Instead of playing games and exploring, there could have been more character development between them. There could be more backstory for, like, Luke and stuff. There could have been more talking. But again, I can understand because she's trying to tap into that childhood feeling. You know, those two girls that were stuck in this house. Like, I can understand it. But from a reading perspective, I would have liked just a little bit more development.
For them to every single night go into the parlor and drink brandy and play chess every single night, I was like, okay, we get it. That's their routine. But we don't need to see it every single scene when they're doing it.
Yeah, you could just, like, skip ahead or something.
Yeah.
I also thought that the conversations about nothing were just too long.
Oh, yeah.
And I felt myself just slipping out of the story because I'm like, what are we doing? Oh, the biggest one for me was when they were like, well, I have to be Dr. Montague because I have a beard. Well, I have a red dress or red shoes on. I have to be Eleanor. I was like, shut up.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah. I think that also plays into, like, the weirdness of, like, Eleanor having to, like, I don't know if it's supposed to establish that she has anxiety in the book. I know that, like, in the beginning they talk about how she has social anxiety because she was secluded with her mom. But she has a lot of moments in the book where she's trying to make herself feel present, where she's like, okay, I am myself. I am in this house. I am interacting with this thing, kind of like where people are like, if you're having an anxiety attack, see, and what do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? The 5 things. I felt like she did that a lot through the book because she didn't know what was real and what was not. And towards the end, when she was being more possessed, she just stopped caring what was real. She was enjoying what the house was doing, the possession of the house, which is really creepy.
Yeah. Again, we've said already, is that the preserve of innocence is just so apparent in this story, whether it be with the children in the town or with the characters or even, like, the children that used to live in the house. They're all about preserving that innocence, and you really, really see it with Nell. Now that we see it from the inside of Nell's head, it makes more sense because I think she was very secluded all her life. She wasn't used to being around other people aside from her mom. It was very weird to an extent that we see so in depth with it. And I think that is what kind of started causing that spiral of the house, like, showing her all of these demon-esque things.
Yeah.
Her being so innocent with that she couldn't really comprehend what was happening and kind of just overtook her.
Maybe the idea, I'm thinking about it, is maybe the idea of her being the most innocent and focusing on her being the most innocent is why the house took her, because it was taking, like, maybe the weakest or the easiest to possess, so it targeted her because she has had, like, the most trauma in her life.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, they kind of talk about her previous experience where the bricks fall from the ceiling.
Like stones or pebbles or something?
I was very confused
Me
about
too.
that. I was like, did stones actually fall from the ceiling?
I think they fell from the outside onto her house. Like onto
okay.
Her roof,
I'm imagining them falling from, like, inside in the ceiling, and I'm like, what?
I don't know.
She's not magic. She's
Yeah.
just psychic.
Like, that was the reason, because Dr. Montague sent out a bunch of letters, and only the 2 women responded.
Yeah.
He reached out to people that experienced ghost phenomenons, and she reached out, I think, just to expand out of life because her mom died recently, so she wanted to go do something else. Yeah, with her experience, I think that was not fleshed out well at all. I needed more to really support that whole thing, but I didn't understand anything.
Because her dad died, right, when she was young?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, but so. I feel like the book, especially, like, with the house, and it's talking of her mother and her mother calling for her in the house, like, from the walls, and she thinks her mom's screaming and beating on the walls, and then just kind of grazes over the fact that her dad died. I feel like both of your parents would be haunting you in a house if they had both passed.
Yeah, maybe she just has a stronger connection with her mom, and her mom just recently passed away.
That's true,
So maybe that's why it connects. But talking about what you were saying, how Theodora was lying about her life, that also kind of ties in with a little bit of that childhood innocence, because, you know, when you're a kid, you go to the store, you're like, I'm gonna have a British accent, and you are gonna be named Dorothy instead, okay? And then we're gonna play that the whole time. Yeah. Like, I think it kind of fed into that a little bit, of kids wanting to be somebody else. Yeah. And, you know, I think adults, when they enter in a different situation, they want to also do that. Yeah. And slip away from their present life. And I think that's what Theodora was doing a little bit here. Especially with it being in the 50s, there was a lot of hints of her being in a romantic relationship with a woman. Maybe she was just kind of getting away from that as well, with it being, you know, again, in the 50s. Yeah. Wasn't something that was kind of praised, I guess. I think she was just kind of taken aback, especially because she never gave a last name. She's like, oh, my name's just Theodora.
Oh, yeah, I totally forgot about that. And, like, made it specific to be like, no, I'm not giving you my last name.
Yeah, so I don't even know if her name is Theodora.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. What the heck?
Yeah, so I think she's just kind of here to take a summer to just change and be somebody else for a little bit.
She definitely emphasizes that with Nell towards the end, when Nell's like, well, I want to follow you back home. And she's like, no, this is just Hill House. Like, this is just, Dr. Montague said, like, he rented it for, like, 4 months was they were supposed to be there, you know? And she's like, these are just 4 months. And then we're all going our separate ways and we're going back to our lives. And even the point that she left on such a bad note, on, like, an argument with her partner, and then she came that night to Hill House, I'm like, kind of makes sense that this is really just, like, a break for her. Yeah. You know, it's not like a new path in her life. Or for now, this is a totally new path in her life that she wants to take.
Absolutely. Very interesting. We're coming up on our own little things.
I know. Very interesting book.
So the house itself, Hill House, it is this old house, lives on in the hills of...
Hillsdale.
Hillsdale?
I think so, yeah.
It's in the United States, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Okay.
I want to say Maine for some reason, but I don't think it's in Maine.
I think it's East Coast somewhere.
Somewhere. It doesn't specifically say, I don't think.
No. It just says it's on the out. It's like, it's out of the town of... It's not even in Hillsdale. It's outside the town of Hillsdale, because you have to go through Hillsdale to get to it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, this house definitely gives me, like... I'm torn between either the Winchester house, which Dr. Montague said it was inspired by the Winchester house, which I thought was kind of cool to, like, name drop something that is something that's pretty real. So that gives us more of an insight of what Hill House has kind of given us. Yeah. Also, Clue vibes. This house is massive, and they get lost very easily, and they make it a very known house rule that you never go anywhere alone.
Which is interesting, because they go a lot of places alone.
Yeah. I just, entire time I was listening, I was like, ooh, who killed Mr. Montague in the library?
Me too, because, like, the way they describe it, they're like, oh, this is the parlor, and this is the billiards room. I'm like, what?
Yeah, and it ties with it being in such an older time as well. Now we're like, oh, living room. When then it was like sitting room or something. Yeah. It changes with time. But I just really enjoyed the house itself. I really think the emphasis on the house is what sold the book and what made it creepy. Because I'm going to be honest, I did not think this book was scary in any way.
Me neither.
And that honestly has to go with, I don't find books scary. I just don't see the horror aspect. I can understand gore, and I can understand disturbing things, and like people feeling towards that, but I just don't understand horror in a book.
Yeah.
Especially compared to like horror adaptations, like the visual.
Yeah.
Like this show I've heard is very scary.
Yeah.
Because of the suspenseful images that you see, and the music and everything brings it together. The book, I didn't feel it.
Yeah, because I mean, like, I feel like you'd have to experience like a really creepy house or stay in a really creepy place to really understand the vibes that they're getting from the different, like, because they talk about like the angles of the house and how there's like a whole set of rooms. I've been trying to imagine this house and draw it out in my head of how there's a whole row of rooms that have no windows. They don't face the outside at all.
The inside rooms.
Yeah, the inside rooms. And then they talk about how like Nell and Theo's rooms are supposed to see the front door, but they can't see the front door because of the angle of the house. I'm like, what? That doesn't make sense. It's like an optical illusion. But it's like, is the house built as an optical illusion, or is the house just possessed and changing itself?
Exactly.
Yeah, so many things that, especially with like horror books, like you said, there's so many things that are up to your interpretation of how is this haunted and what does it look like. You can't really know how scary it is because there's so many options of what it could be.
Exactly. The optical illusion is a good way to describe it, because they go into detail talking about how everything's slightly slanted, so it feels like you're always kind of like falling. And the way that everything's composed in the house, it gives this eerie feeling of this was not made for living.
Oh yeah, like the sameness of it. She talks about how like it looks like they just kind of wanted to hurry up and get out of the house. Yeah. And everything is just exactly the same.
I think that was really well done, and I think that what's kind of adds that more disturbing aspect than really horror aspect. I just want to take a second here to shout out the Patreon subscribers. So a huge shout out to Nick W., Bree P, and Lulu. I appreciate you guys supporting the podcast. I really enjoy doing this, and I'm glad that some people are listening. At least 3 people are listening. And you guys are awesome. If you guys want to be on the podcast shout out, just head over to Patreon, the link in the description, and subscribe today. So who would you say is your favorite character?
I feel like this is a pretty obvious answer, but it's definitely Mrs. Montague. She's a baddie. She knows what she wants in life.
Boss.
She's a girl boss. She knows what she wants, and she's not afraid to go get it. And she's not afraid of Dr. Montague that she's gonna do it, and she doesn't care what he says. Also, I think it's really interesting that she just brings along our Arthur, who I'm still kind of confused as to who he is.
Oh my god, I have a question. I have a question before. I didn't mean to interrupt, but are Arthur and Mrs. Montague like undercoverly dating or like seeing each other?
I think they have to be, because the way Dr. Montague like is like, why did you bring Arthur when she first shows up? And she's like, oh, well, to drive me here. I couldn't drive myself. He's like, what is he doing here? He was probably like, okay. So yeah, I think there's definitely some shady stuff going on with Arthur. And also, every time Miss Montague was like, I need protection, Arthur's like, I'll do it. I got a gun. I will stand in the hallway. I was like, you need to chill out, Arthur. Her husband is here. He can do that.
But yeah, okay, sorry, go ahead, continue why you like her.
Oh no, I just like what a strong character. Like you said, she has like a really big personality, and I feel like she's what really gets this book going. And she comes in so late in the game. I say late in the game when they talk about this, they're like, oh, it's been a week. And I was like, it's been a week?
It's been a week?
Okay.
So that's actually one thing I want to talk about. Time passing is so weird in this, and I think that it goes into it being creepy. Yeah. But it seems like they're there for so long, but they're there for like a week, 2 weeks maybe?
Yeah, and they're supposed to be there for 4 months. When I read that, I was like, oh, this book is going to take place over 4 months. Yeah. And then I got to the last chapter, and I was like, I'm sorry, what?
But the creepy thing is that they didn't understand time was passing.
No.
They were like, oh, Mrs. Montague is getting here Saturday? Well, what day is it? They've been there for like 2 days. You know how long.
And also, like, they note when the sun goes down. They know when the days are over. So I was, like, so confused about that, because they know they can't go out in dark. And Miss Dudley leaves. Everything's on a schedule for a reason.
Exactly, yeah. Though 10, 1, and 6. Like, you know what time she's getting there. I don't know. It's weird. The time passing I didn't love. I was kind of confused. Yeah. Anyways, I'm sorry again. I keep interrupting me.
No, you're good. Wait, what was that? How she just showed up a weekend. She's just like, I'm gonna get things going. Okay, so what I was confused about for the longest time is when she brings in the planchette, but then I realized that that's kind of what gets the whole thing going. So the planchette is like a type of Ouija board, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was kind of confused during that. And then she starts talking to spirits, maybe, or the house. And she starts like, oh, well, do you know about the nun? And Dr. Montague's like, no, I don't know about the nun. And she's like, well, you have to know about it. He's like, there's a lot of nun apparitions. And she's like, no, I know what I'm going on. She's like, I know what's going on, and I'm in charge.
Oh, God. She's also my favorite character, obviously.
A vibe.
Yeah, she just storms in. She's sassy. She's witty. She means business. She literally comes in and she's like, give me your most haunted room.
Yeah.
I'm not here to mess around. I'm here to hang out with Arthur. Okay?
Yeah. I'm here to hang out with Arthur.
And I love her because she loves books. And she is a woman after my own heart. Like, she just comes in and she's like, oh, books? The library? Please take me there. And she just goes on this whole spiel about books. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm falling in love. I loved her. I wish she was there from the beginning. For real, though, she is a vital part of the story. She gets everything going, as you said. If she wasn't there, the story wouldn't have been a story.
Oh,
like,
definitely
she got everything going, and she just had so much personality. And I think it was just because compared to the others, they didn't have a personality.
Oh, exactly.
So it made, I know a lot of people don't like her because of how hard she comes on. So I know a lot of people don't like her, but I really, really enjoyed her. Every time she comes in, because I read it a couple times, every time she comes in, I'm like, yes, queen.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, yeah, speak your truth.
The next thing I really want to talk about is one theme that kind of comes in a lot is the theme of vanity. And how everyone just really wants to talk about themselves. Kind of, it hits home for anybody that kind of reads this because it makes sense. Anyone you ask something about, they always want to talk about themselves. And if it's not themselves, then like somehow they're connected to this person. So they always want to talk about themselves. And Luke is useless, but he does have this one conversation with Nell where Nell's like, Luke, why do people want to talk to each other? I mean, what are the things people already want to find out about other people? And he's like, well, what do you want to know about me, for instance? And she immediately like, oh, okay, so it's about you.
Yeah.
I'm not here to talk about you. I'm here about talking about, like, the general idea of, like, why we want to know about other people. I just think it's so interesting how they kind of go into an entire, almost chapter about it. And how, even though they are here and they're the only people they talk about, it's so easy to just manipulate anyone with what you say. With Theodora, how we were talking about earlier, how she could just make up whatever she wants, and maybe she isn't telling the truth.
Nell's a lot in her head, and she's like, well, why aren't they asking about me? Or there's a lot of times where we're watching her watch the room, and she's wondering why she isn't included or why people are doing what they're doing, and she's like really aware of the conversations that are happening between other people and not with herself at the same time.
It's a fine line between vanity and like wanting to just talk about yourself and then wanting to know what the other person genuinely wants to say. Nowadays, it's hard for people to really like connect with everything going on. So a lot of things are online. So a lot of people are like, I want to ask this person a question, but I really just want to answer it myself. And it formulates to these secrets that eventually just get held over each other. And it's either, do you actually genuinely want to know what's going on, or do you want something to have leverage over that person?
Yeah.
And eventually, you know, have these secrets that could hurt them, develop this relationship with them just to eventually use it against them. Like, how far does it go?
Yeah. I think Theo actually does that, as she kind of uses her relationship with Nell against her towards the end, where she's like, no, you need to go, which was really good for Nell. But at the same time, Theo kind of plays into their relationship the whole book. Like, it's not like she's hiding that her and Nell have a relationship. She calls her, I think when she, like, when she's on the staircase, she's like, baby, come down from there. Like, she calls her sweetie and baby, like, she calls her all these names, and, like, she really plays into it. And then at the end, she's like, I don't want to stay here with you. You need to go home. And I'm like, hold on, that was a big switch. It's kind of like the interactions between Theo and Nell. So when Nell, there's like a time when she's just watching Theo, and every time Theo has a reaction to something or she has her own emotion, Nell really doesn't like it. She was like, whenever she's hungry or tired, she gets whiny, and she doesn't like Theo when she's whiny. And which really emphasizes, I think, also the innocence and the vanity portion of it. It's like, she's acting like a child kind of in that situation, but at the same time, Nell can't stand her acting the way that she doesn't want her to act. Like, she still wants it to be about her. So absolutely. I really love that.
Yeah, it all ties it's so interweavingly, I don't know if that's actually a word, very well done. Very well done.
The only thing I don't think is well interweaved is their relationship together and then the house. Mm-hmm. I feel like we jumped so separate. At one point, we're like, oh, they're in love and they're doing this thing by the brook. And the house is scary. And then she's painting her nails. And then the house is scary. And I'm like, are we on little dates in between the scary portions of the book? And I feel like they could have done so much more. The book could have been longer and there could have been way more about their relationship. Well done with the house. Yeah. Their interactions with the house at the same time. But a lot of their interactions happened outside, which I was intrigued by.
Very interesting. I have a question for you.
Yes.
So there's a quote from Shakespeare, obviously, that gets used consistently throughout the entire book. And the quote is, journeys ending and lovers meeting. What does that mean? What did you interpret it from it?
So for Nell, I think I interpret it for her as like she's looking for love, especially in the 50s, and being a woman, and also maybe being bi-curious if she was. That's what she's looking for. And she lived with her sister. She never had really anything that was her own. So I think that she was really looking for a new life with somebody. Mm-hmm. She's looking to somebody to attach herself with who probably already has their own life, kind of why she attaches herself to Theo, to find herself. So her journey ends in finding somebody to fulfill her life.
It's just interesting because it just was repetitively said throughout, and sometimes she said it out loud. Most of the time it was just in her head. Mm-hmm. I interpret it as like maybe her mom was very much into Shakespeare, and this was a story that she consistently read, and maybe that was one of her mom's favorite quotes, and she kind of picked up the habit from it. But I don't know. I agree with that too, is like she's so connected to somebody. Mm-hmm. She is attached to somebody in some way. Yeah. So with her being on her own, it's causing a lot of anxiety. So it's a kind of an affirmation for her as she's like trying to be like, okay, just keep going until you find somebody. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely like an affirmation. Like, I need to do this thing in life to make me happy. But I wanted to look this up because I feel like I've heard that quote in a different book. Like the Cassandra Clare novels, their spin-off, there's like a quote in that book that I swear like they say the exact same thing. And I'm like, but it's supposed to be like from some book in that book, so I was very confused. I need to look that up.
It's definitely Shakespeare for sure. Yeah. So I'm sure a lot of people draw inspiration from him. So I would not be surprised at all if it's not in something else somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Who would you say in this one is your favorite relationship?
I want to go with the obvious answer of Eleanor and Theo because it's so important to the plot line, but I feel like Eleanor's relationship with everybody in her life is really important to the plot line. I also think that her relationship with her sister is very vital to even why she leaves and what she's doing in life. Also, her relationship with her mom, like every relationship she has is very, very important, and the relationship with Theo throughout the whole book is, I think, what carries and is the main point of the whole book.
It kind of helps with Nellie's transition in her mindset, which we'll talk about in a second, is a lot of it is exposure to Theo, which might be the first person in her life a woman that she's not related to. So I think that kind of opened up a lot of things for her and like left her a little confused maybe in some ways, because she's so used to taking care of her mom and being with her sister that she sees a strong, independent woman. And then Mrs. Montague, of course, gets there too. And I think that, like, an example with her painting her toenails, and she paints it red or black, one of the two. Yeah. Theo's like, "Oh, this looks great. You should keep it on." And Nellie's like, "No, I can't have this. Like, this is not me." And Theo is pushing her to be herself, and I think Eleanor doesn't know how to react that way. Yeah. And so I think her meeting Theodore, it could have changed her life if it kept going.
Yeah, right? It could have been a great relationship.
Yeah, I could definitely see them being friends if outside of this whole weird situation of the house. Yeah. But yeah, I also said Theo in Nellie. I found it just very whimsical. I think their relationship started at least very whimsical and very childish, and then eventually it turned into like a mind game with the house kind of playing with them. And of course, I get LGBT vibes from them.
Right? In the 50s, too. Like, I love it. Yeah. I did not expect that from this book at all.
I was like, hold on a second.
I had to go back and reread, like, some of the ways that she worded stuff, because I was like, she definitely worded this a certain way, so we pick up a certain vibe from this. Yeah. You know, like, the way she worded that she had a roommate, and didn't specifically say anything about her roommate, but kind of implied that they had a, like, relationship fight, and so she wanted to leave. So many things are implied, I feel like.
When Nellie's asking about Theo's life, she's like, "Oh, we decorated the living room like this. We decided to do this. We thrifted this." hinting at maybe a relationship. Yeah. And then right after, Nellie's like, oh, are you married? Uh-huh. And you see Theo, she takes a moment of hesitation. She's like, oh, no. Yeah. So it's definitely heavily hinted that right? She has maybe not necessarily a romantic girlfriend that she lives with, mm-hmm. but she has some sort of relationship going on. Yeah. So, yeah, I really enjoyed that. And mm-hmm. I was shocked, too. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, right? I can get behind that. But I also really liked the relationship with the Dudleys with the house.
The Dudleys are an enigma to me.
Yeah, they are...
Are they real?
I don't know.
Are they ghosts?
I don't know.
I don't either.
But I found it very interesting because they take care of the house. Mm-hmm. Mr. and Mrs. Dudley, she comes in, she keeps it clean, and she cooks them dinner, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And she's like, after 6, I'm not coming back. I don't come here after dark, yeah. Okay? Because she knows. To an extent, she respects the house. Oh, like, yeah. The china and the silverware and everything, she always puts back. She keeps every door closed. Like, she understands and respects the house.
She talks about, like, the dinner plates need to be back in the shelves by 11. Yeah. Like, they have to be. And the linens go in the linen closet. And this goes here. And she's like, because that's what you do. They're like, well, why don't we do it this way? Or like how she leaves the table dirty overnight. They did not like that. They're like, that's kind of gross that we're just going to leave the table overnight. And they're like, well, she's not going to come back. And it's like, well, this is how she's always been doing it, so I would just leave it the way she's doing it.
I definitely see Jackson trying to interpret of her being almost a little crazy. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I picked it up as like she just respects and understands the house and she doesn't want anything bad to happen. And Mr. Dudley's just... He's just Mr. Dudley. He's just there. He just opens the gate.
We love the men in this book. They are just there. Yes! Mr. Montague, Luke, and Mr. Dudley. They're just there. They're supporting characters. And I love that. All these women.
Yeah, Mr. Dudley, when we get introduced to him, he's like, why are you here? Why are you at my house? Yeah. And he's like, doesn't have the authority at all, but pretends. Yeah. And Nellie's like, I don't know what to do.
He's like, are you meeting someone? And she's like, yeah. He's like, well, there's nobody here. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
He's like a classic old man. Yeah. God, it's so funny. But yeah, I really like that relationship as well. Last thing I kind of want to talk about is the ending. Obviously, we have Nellie's mindset changing throughout. Oh, yeah. We have her being very anxious and almost childish as the house kind of weaves itself into her brain and starts to manipulate her a lot. You see her start to get aggressive almost. She starts to feel like she's losing her mind. You see her start to turn on people, especially Theo. Oh, yeah. Until the end where she's just completely overtaken by this house. It goes really well with how everything kind of goes out. Like, Mrs. Montague gets there, Ouija board comes out, and you know as soon as she mentions it that it's gonna go bad. Mm-hmm. And then with Nellie kind of being possessed, I'm picking up.
That's what I was thinking too, because especially in the end scene when she's on the staircase, a big portion when she's running around that she doesn't realize that she's running around. She just is, and then when she gets to the top of the staircase, and then Theo calls out her name, and then she kind of comes back to herself, and she's like, Thea, I can't get down, or something like that, where she kind of comes back to herself, and I'm like, oh, so she's been possessed this whole time and not really understanding what she's doing, or probably enjoying what she's doing because she's possessed.
It was very much left up to interpretation of how you perceive it. And then with the morning after and Mr. Montague being like, you gotta go. Yeah. Bro, you gotta go. This is not your place. Because he says at the beginning, like, if you guys feel the house overtaking you, you have to leave. Because it will get to the point where you can't ever leave. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately for Nellie, because she's so innocent, as you were saying, she got so, like, attached to the house that it just overtook her because she's so weak. Like, it took her instantly, and she just kind of let it in, I think, because she was experiencing things that she never did before. It ends with them being like, you gotta go. She is pulling away from the house, and she crashes her car into a tree. Yeah. Because she doesn't want to leave, and she's just stuck there now. Yeah. And then I don't know, I think it was kind of cool. Like,
I hate to say that I loved it, but I really did. I think it was like a really good ending of the house is keeping her. And there's a quote that says it wants to make them part of the house, and that's what it's doing, and it did that. And I think that's really cool. I loved it.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to kind of bring all of the loose ends together at the end. Mm-hmm. I think if there were ever to be a sequel, having Nellie as one of the ghosts would be just really cool. Oh, to kind of see her. And I also like that we only get to see, you know, as you had said, they're there for 3 or 4 months, and we see only a week of that.
Yeah.
So what else happens? Were they forced to leave? Because obviously there was, a death, it seems. They had to bring police and stuff. Did they force them to leave? Did the aggression of the ghost get worse? Like, that's
a good point.
I want to know what happens.
Because the very last page just says that his dissertation or whatever he writes is, like, it's not taken well by the public. And, like, the public does not like what he writes about Hill House. And, like, that's it. I'm like, what? Okay.
Yeah, that part didn't support the rest of the story. No, it didn't. The best, but I'm thinking, because I've heard that the TV show takes place in the 90s, I want to say.
Oh, yeah?
So maybe it kind of picks up, and maybe Nell is one of the ghosts there, but I definitely want to watch it and see.
See, because I watched The Haunting of Bly Manor, and so I feel like the character in that show was named Nellie, and so now I want to go back and rewatch it, because there's a lot of things that I feel like are similarities between that show and this book, and I'm guessing they probably pulled some things, but, like, that show takes place in England. They definitely pull from this book loosely. There are ghosts and apparitions, and, like, there are people who are ghosts there. So, like, at the same time, like, you know they're ghosts because it's a TV show. So, like, it's way more apparent what they are.
So, do you want to play a little game?
I'd love to play a game.
All right. So, I have a list of different ghosts here.
Ooh.
I'm going to give you the definition, and you just tell me which ghost you think it is.
Okay.
All right. So, a female spirit who wails warnings.
That's a banshee.
Yeah. A ghost capable of manipulating physical objects.
A poltergeist.
Yeah.
I know my apparitions.
Slay. An apparition of a deceased person.
A ghost?
Yeah. An evil spirit, sometimes possessing the weak-minded.
That's a demon.
Yes. A person who returns from the dead.
Revenant?
Yep.
Yes. I didn't even know what that was.
A ghost who appears to inform someone of danger.
Crisis apparition.
And a legendary evil who feeds on corpse.
A ghoul.
A ghoul. Gabagool.
Gabagool.
Yay!
Woo! I can't believe I got all those right. I was really nervous for this.
Bro, you got 100%.
Oh, I love me some good spooky apparitions, and I watched a lot of Supernatural, so I know my ghosts, let me tell you.
Oh, gosh. For sizzles, really, though. Dean and Sam in this house.
They would be whipping things left and right. They'd have friggin' salt all over all the doors. They would be slaying the game. I think that they would own this house 100%.
Could you imagine like exploring though, going around having a little picnic?
It'd be so cute.
Kind of coming to a close here, but before we go, we're gonna do some missed opportunities. So, what would you say, in your own opinion, if you were writing this book, what would you do differently?
If I was writing this book, I would make this book longer.
Oh, yeah.
I would include way more details about the Nell and Theo relationship, and I think more about Theo's backstory. And I feel like I would kind of want the house, because they kind of implied that either the house is using her mom as a way to draw her in, or it's really her mom as a ghost in the house, pulling her into the house, but in some way her mom is involved in it. So I feel like if we had more backstory about her relationship with her mom, and then like her mom was more of a carried role throughout the house, of that's why she brought her in, because I feel like it was very subtly implied, but never fully explored. And that's another thing, is so many thoughts are so subtly implied and not fully just like stated, and I hate that. I love when things are explained to me and are just like, this is what happened and this is the facts. Yeah. And they didn't do that. A lot of things are left up to what you want to interpret it as.
I don't think the mom was part of the house. I think the mom was part of Nellie and was attached to her, because some ghosts do get attached to people.
Yeah.
Having just a small incident before where we kind of pick up a vibe that maybe the ghost was attached to her before.
Yeah.
And then when she got to the house was just a house. But then Nellie brought the ghost would be kind of cool.
Oh, true. Yeah, I feel like, because that's also a very common theme in horror and stuff, that like ghosts are attached to people, or that they have like unfinished business. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I would change a lot of like the whole book in general. So now
I kind of feel bad because I have a lot. Okay. So here's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is, I don't think this should have been a ghost story. This could have been more just completely focused on the house, and we see just the house making them go crazy. This is more of a story about the physical body and the mental mind than really a ghost story. I think there's too much emphasis on that. Okay, maybe not too much, because there wasn't much ghost activity, but either turn Nellie, or maybe even Luke, bring Luke more into the story, because he has a connection to the Hill House, and turn them against everyone, that person starts killing off the characters. And we don't know who does it, because if Nellie, let's say for a prime example, is starting to go crazy, we stick with that innocent part of her, and we never see the other part of her. It would kind of perceive it as more of like a psychological thing than really a paranormal thing. And then plot twist, she was actually the one that brought everyone there. Like, she gave Dr. Montague this assignment, maybe. He reached out to everyone, and she just happened to apply. Like, I think it would have turned more into a murder mystery. It would have had a stronger appeal. But again, that's just my own, like, that's how I would have interpreted it if I was using Hill House myself. But with it being a ghost story and going back to the general plot, the time passing was really throwing me off. There should have been either time shifts where we saw just a little bit more time at Hill House. The time passing just throws the readers off a lot. And I want more time for the characters to fall into the house more. I think they just weren't there long enough to really support the stuff that happens. And again, maybe it does because it happens so fast, but I just feel like it was kind of rushed in a lot of places. And the big thing was, like, the 10, 1, and 6 emphasize more on the time passing. Maybe, like, they don't realize that it's 10 o'clock and, you know, the breakfast is already out and, like, maybe it's actually lunch and they don't know that. Like, emphasize more on the time passing. And then I also really think that Nellie should have spent the first night there completely alone. That would have drawn more connection to Nellie in the house. Because the first night they were there, nothing happened. And I think her being there alone, or maybe just with Theodora. Don't bring the men there too, you know, the supporting characters. But yeah, just having a night alone there would have strengthened that bond a little bit more. But again, I don't know if Nellie would actually stay there alone.
That's true, because, like, Dr. Montague is, like, he knows the whole layout of the house, you know, and how, like, if you go in one door, you might not know what other door you're going to come out of, and you could be in a totally different part of the house. So, like, I feel like they would have definitely gotten lost on the first night, which would have been very fun. That would have been cool. I feel like the first night was the most important night, because that's where the suspense is. They're building up this house, and you're like, oh, I wouldn't want to sleep here. But nothing happens. And you're like, oh, it's not as bad as I thought it was. Because Dr. Montague was like, oh, well, nothing's going to happen this night because it's on, like, a schedule. So he knows, he's like, well, nothing's going to happen tonight. We're going to be fine. So they all go to bed, and they are completely fine. And they grazed over that one, too, about how the house is on schedule. I'm like, what? Clearly, because Miss Dudley's on a schedule, so the house has to be on a schedule, and they don't talk about the schedule.
I don't know. I would have if I was doing it, you know, I would do more solid POVs. I would have done a POV of the ghost or the house itself. Oh, 100%. Like, watching now would have been cool. Yeah, that's when I would have jumped into third person and do, like, oh, the house is now kind of the thing. Yeah, so is there anything else that you kind of want to talk about before we head out?
There is one really random topic, and that is when they talk about her eating apple pie with sour cream. Have you ever done that?
No, okay. I never will.
I was like, I'm sorry, what? Ew.
I did notice that.
Disgusting. I literally had to write it down because I was like, do people eat this? Is this a thing?
Yeah, because she was talking about, like, I really like this and I really like this, to kind of, like, connect back to herself and, like, remember who she is. And I was like, apple pie and sour cream.
Right?
Ew.
Disgusting.
I think she meant to put whipped cream in there, but then it was already published, so she was like, it's fine, I'm not going to go back in.
Maybe people will try, maybe it's good.
She's starting a trend. She's a trendsetter. Good job, Jackson. I love it.
That'd be so gross.
Yeah, so before we head out, we're going to do one last thing, and we're going to rate this book, but we do a little bit different here on the Book Stop. We make up our own rating scale. I would give The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson 6 hours dancing through the halls of Hill House at 3 a.m. out of 12. So, again, I think it should have been longer. I think if it was longer and had more emphasis on certain things, it could have been supported a little bit better. But I wouldn't classify this as, what was the quote again? The perfect work of unnerving terror.
I did also read somewhere that it was one of the scariest books of its time, and I was like, I need to read other books from this time and really analyze if this is really that scary.
It was not scary. I would not classify this as a scary book. Was it creepy in some parts? Sure. But I did not feel like a chill down my spine. I think Nellie was a good main character, and she was the perfect candidate to kind of get taken by the house. in the whole Hill House. I really enjoyed Hill House itself.
Okay, so I would probably rate Hill House 4 of Nellie's painted toes out of 10. I gave her a 4 because I really like her writing as an author, and I would definitely want to read other things that she's written, because I think the way she words stuff is really beautifully, and her, like, one-liners are amazing. But her storytelling needs work, so I feel like there's definitely probably other books by her that I would enjoy. But I did like the house itself, like you said. That was my favorite part of the whole book. And it was, like, the house itself was eerie and creepy, and gave me the best visuals of the whole book. Everything else was kind of blurry, but the house visuals were phenomenal. I loved that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and reading this book for October, and I hope it put you in a little bit of a spooky mood.
Such a spooky mood.
I love it. So we have something scheduled next year.
Oh,
so
yeah. Far in the future. You gotta stay tuned.
Oh, you're gonna have to stay tuned. If you guys head over to Patreon, we have our schedule on there so you can see when Anastasia's going back.
And the amazing book that I chose.
Ooh.
If you subscribed, which you should be.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Thank you for turning the pages with us today. If you've enjoyed this episode, show your support by leaving a review, sharing the episode, and following the podcast on Instagram at The Book Stop Podcast. Join us on Patreon for early access to episodes and other additional content. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Hope you are too.